Hello, my name is Orly Klein. I'm going to be doing this lecture today. Some of you might know me from SS 430's Contemporary Social Inequalities. I helped to coordinate that module. And I am actually going to switch my face off because I can't bear it. And I find it distracting to see myself when I'm trying to give a lecture. So I'm going to switch off the camera now so we can focus in on the other stuff, hopefully. All right, so in this lecture, we're going to be looking at what do we mean by kindness? What is kindness? What is the link between kindness and well-being? And when and why are people kind? So before we go any further, I just want you to take a little minute to kind of just think for yourself. Just have a little think about how would you define kindness? What does it mean to you? What do you think kindness is? Don't Google it. Just have a little think for yourself. What do we mean by kindness? It's important that we try and kind of establish what it is we're talking about. So let's have a look at some formal definitions of kindness. Hopefully you've already thought for yourself about how you understood it. But a kind of formal definition of kindness is the quality of being friendly, generous, compassionate, and considerate. Okay, so the quality of being friendly. So it's a quality rather than an act. It's a personal attribute under this particular definition. It's about being nice, basically. So if we have a look at the kind of the synonyms that we have for kindness, there's things like benignity, which is that thing about not being harmful, benevolence, which is around giving and generosity, humanity, which I think is an interesting one as a synonym for kindness, but we talk about if something's humane, that it's kind, generosity, charity, which I think again is around a kind of a generous humaneness, sympathy, compassion, and tenderness, which is around about a kind of soft, loving gentleness. So kindness clearly encompasses many things that we'd view positively, but it's not always straightforward though, I don't think, and it can be highly problematic in terms of how we interpret behaviours as kind or unkind, and how psychology seeks to explain kindness. So to try and illustrate this, I'm going to show you, we're going to do another little exercise that I'd like you to just kind of have a little think for yourself. So, how would you rate the following activities, kind or unkind? Okay, so let's have a look at the first one. You see a homeless person begging on the street and you give 3 pence, 3 whole pence. Are you being kind or are you being unkind? Have a little think. Next scenario, a heroin addicted friend is desperate for a hit but is out of money. You give them the money that they need. Is that being kind or is that being unkind? Have a little think. Third scenario, you're getting ready for a night out and your partner asks you if they look good in their outfit. You don't think they do, and you tell them that. Are you being kind or are you being unkind? Now, hopefully you can see from these that it's really not always straightforward at all. That what we mean by kindness is a complex thing, and of course, you know, we're not doing a philosophy course now, so we can't get into kind of in-depth discussions about these things. But I really just want to show you how kindness is not a straightforward thing, that it's quite complex, and perhaps that goes some of the way to explaining why psychology really struggles to explain kindness. So what is psychology's take on kindness? Well, in psychology, rather than talking about kindness, they tend to use alternative terms instead. And the two key terms that are used are that of pro-social behaviour and altruism. So I've got a definition here of pro-social behaviour as being a voluntary behaviour designed to benefit another. A voluntary behaviour designed to benefit another. So something that you're choosing to do it. So there's got to be some level of freedom and intention there. And it's behaviour designed to benefit another. So we're talking about things like cooperation, friendliness, sharing, those kind of things all come under that broad umbrella of pro-social behaviour. Another important area of literature when it comes to psychology's take on kindness focuses in on what they call altruism. And altruism is defined as an act that benefits the recipient at cost to the donor. An act that benefits the recipient at cost to the donor. Now this is tricky stuff. Think about it. An act that benefits the recipient at cost to the donor. Now, you could argue that it's easy to argue really that any act that you carry out that benefits someone else is at cost to you. On a basic level, there's a cost in terms of your time, in terms of your energy, even if that's just kind of mental energy. There's always a cost to you of some sort. But one of the big kind of debates within the field of altruism is whether there is also always a benefit to you in terms of improving your status, in terms of improving your self-esteem, your self-confidence, in terms of kind of making you feel good about yourself, that there are some key forms of benefit to you that aren't just about, I'm gonna, scratch your back so you scratch mine, or whatever it might be. So there's always a benefit to you. And if that's the case, does that make it any less altruistic? Well, Bateson would say that yes, it does, that actually true altruism is selfless, that you do it despite the cost to you, that it's if there's a benefit to you, then it's not true altruism. And Staub similarly suggests that there's always private rewards, that whatever the kind of external kind of cost to you, that actually there's always rewards to you, that it's always about, you're always going to feel better, or hope to be seen as better by other people. So it's a tricky area. So we include this topic in this module on well-being because there's loads of evidence of the benefits of kindness, not just to the recipient, but also to the donor, to the provider, the carrier outer of the kindness. Loads of evidence of its benefits for well-being, and we're going to look at some of this now. So, for instance, there's stuff around the idea that doing good helps you feel good, that it improves your physical and your mental well-being. And if you're interested, you can check out these papers by Dillard and by Omoto. Very, very kind of clear, robust evidence for the idea that doing good helps you feel good. And indeed, Lee et al. 2018, they found that performing acts of kindness for 7 days in a row increased happiness. And in fact, that the more acts of kindness you do, the happier you feel. So very clear correlation between performing acts of kindness and increasing subjective happiness. And what was interesting was that it doesn't matter who the recipient of that kindness is, whether it's a friend, whether it's a stranger, whether it's yourself, and I'll be coming back to that in a minute. But also, actually, that it also works, this increase in subjective happiness works even if you're just observing someone else being kind. All of this boosted subjective happiness. There's lots of evidence to suggest that voluntary work improves psychological well-being. So back to this thing of doing good makes you feel good. And then, interestingly, I think, and perhaps kind of related to some of the motivations why people do voluntary work, is firstly to do with the negative state relief model by Cialdini et al. 87. And what they found was that helping others makes you feel better if you're feeling bad. So if you're feeling bad, one of the things that you can do is actually to be kind to other people. Now, there's an element that might feel kind of counterintuitive, because it's almost like if you're feeling really rubbish and empty and down, the idea of then helping other people, you might feel like, well, you're giving from an empty pot, you know, there's nothing, you've nothing to give. But actually, if you do kind of, you know, pull yourself off the floor, that you might find that if you give to other people, the process of giving, that process of kindness fills your pot of itself, so that actually your sense of well-being massively increases if you're able to find a way to be kind to others while you're feeling bad. So it's a really important kind of thing to bear in mind in terms of all of us and our own kind of struggles, that actually helping other people can help us with our own struggles. And so similarly then, Volhart talks about the idea of altruism being born of suffering, that actually negative experiences can serve as a trigger or a motivator to help other people. You know, that often we're helping because we don't want others to suffer in the way that we have. And of course we see this happen time and time again. Now earlier I mentioned in passing self-kindness, and I just want to look at that in a bit more detail. So what do we mean by self-kindness? Well, self-kindness is really about being caring and compassionate to yourself, to challenge that critical voice. All of us have a critical voice inside of us. There's really no getting away from it. But it's about kind of finding ways to challenge that, to silence it, to not let it be dominant, and or to not pay too much attention to it, because it's, you know, it's such a core part of being human, but can obviously be very problematic if we don't kind of take charge. So self-kindness is a really, really important part of how we look after our own well-being. So being caring and compassionate to yourself. So this is really about then offering yourself warmth and unconditional acceptance, even though some behaviours might need changing. So, you know, it might be that there are things that you do or things about yourself that you don't like, that you can't stand even. And that, you know, you could torture yourself with some of the things that you've done in the past or whatever it might be. But instead, this is really about kind of treating yourself as you would a friend. That if a friend came to you and said, oh my God, I can't believe it, I said this really stupid thing, or I did this really awful thing, or whatever it might be, you would never to a friend turn around and go, oh, blimey, okay, well, not sure I want to be friends with you again. Instead, you'd be kind to them, you'd offer compassion, you'd offer caring, you'd try to understand from their point of view why it was they did that. You'd let them know that even though they're really mortified, that it really wasn't that bad and that everybody does it and it's no big deal, blah, 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 blah. And what self-kindness is about is really taking that same attitude to yourself, being as good to yourself as you are to other people. So treating yourself as you would a dear friend, basically being on your side, So some of those things are around kind of soothing and comforting yourself in stressful or painful situations. So maybe it might mean that instead of kind of rushing to fix something or rushing to control the situation, to maybe take a moment to soothe or comfort yourself. One of the things, is to maybe think about a time in the last few days when you were kind to yourself. Now, for some of us, this might feel really difficult. It might be really difficult that we're so busily engaged in the process of beating ourselves up about things, or being dissatisfied with ourselves in different ways, whether it's our appearance or our behaviour, or over focusing on our kind of faults and failings, that it might be difficult to think of a time in the last few days when you're kind to yourself. But that's very useful information of itself, that actually it's vital that we're kind to ourselves, especially now at a time when we've all had a really, really difficult year. Think about whether you've done anything in the last few days that's actually been kind to yourself through the ongoing situation, that's been kind to yourself through all these stresses and strains and frustrations and difficulties. Just think of a time when you were kind to yourself, and if you can't, then for God's sake, book one in soon. Because there are numerous benefits of self-kindness that we'll have a look at now. And the first and the key one is that there's clear evidence that it improves well-being. There's also important evidence that it improves resilience. I've got a paper here by Neff and Germer, but Neff is one of the key writers in this field, that there's lots of evidence that suggests that self-kindness moderates our reactions to stressful events. It makes us more able to not kind of plunge when things get difficult. It also increases our self-confidence, so that we're less afraid of failure, that we're more confident about our own abilities, so it doesn't feel as kind of catastrophic when things go wrong. And interestingly, there's specific evidence by Terry et al. 2012 that suggests that it protects against the challenges of student life. So Terry et al. Carried out a 3-week group intervention with 52 female first and second year students, and they called the intervention Becoming Your Own Mental Coach. Now, half of them were trained in time management and half of them were trained in mindful self-compassion. And what they found was interesting. So they found that although there wasn't a kind of clear impact on mood, there were very significant improvements in life satisfaction, in connectedness, in optimism, in self-efficacy, so your own sense of kind of competence and ability to get things done. And there was less kind of rumination, less kind of torturing yourself with negative thoughts, going over and over something, less worry, and also, like I say, sort of specifically to do with student life, that they found that they were able to handle social and academic struggles much better, that they felt less homesick, they were less depressed, that they were happier of the course that they'd chosen to do in the university they'd chosen to go to. Okay, so self-kindness is important. And so I'm going to stop this first section of the lecture here, and I hope you can have a think about some ways in which you could be kind to yourself over the rest of the day and the next few days. All right, thank you very much.